And then when you and I have a little bit of trust, what ends up happening is we're not afraid to flex our like risk-taking muscles together. We can do something maybe a little crazier than we thought we would do and take a risk in business or in friendship or in community. So there's this cycle that authentic vulnerability creates trust and then allows us to create these risk-taking muscles so that we kind of take bigger and maybe more important risks together.
You're listening to Real Returns, where we learn how real leaders are finding real purpose through the work they do. Join your hosts, Andrew and Dan, as they interview leaders about how their businesses are creating meaningful change for individuals and communities around the world.
All right, welcome back to Season 8 of the Real Returns podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Reichert. I'm joined with somebody who I would actually call a friend. We've known each other for a long time, Patrick Colletti. Incredibly successful career and now doing a lot of advising to CEOs who are following in his footsteps. So Patrick, welcome to the show. Can you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so my story started, I don't know if it was when I had a paper route or I had my first job washing dishes, but there was this kind of desire and a bug in me to ultimately run companies and lead and just be involved in entrepreneurship. So I got my first real opportunity when I was in my mid-20s. I joined a startup, which was exciting. And within about a year, that startup failed. And the board laid everybody off, asked two of us if we want to stick around, gave us 90 days, cut my pay in half, and said, if you can fix it, you can stick around. And so that was kind of the cold start of my entrepreneurial beginnings.
So let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
So a lot of people in that situation would likely back away and you leaned in. What is it about you that made you actually excited about that? Like, it sounds like some people would say, oh, that's an impossible challenge. Why would I even sign up for something like that? What is it about you that made you not shy away?
Well, this is I teach some classes at Carnegie Mellon, as you know. And one of the things I like to ask the students is, are you the kind of person that will do anything to win or will do anything not to lose? And it may seem like a trick question, but it's actually, something I learned about myself, which was as much as I idolized and liked the idea of being the person to score the goal or to always win, I think what I learned about myself, certainly over the past 20 years, is I really like to find situations that are rough and make them better. And so that stuck with me a little bit. But I think to answer your question, in that moment, I would have done anything to have it not fail. And so there wasn't some grand vision of what success would look like. It was more about, how do we fix this? There's a lot of problems. We got to make it right. We got to make it work.
Interesting. So like the picture I get when you describe that is almost like a doctor operating on somebody that is on life support. It's like that was the company was on life support. And you're saying like, hey, I'm not trying to make this the most successful person in the world. I just want to make sure that they stay alive. Like that's the picture I got. Is that kind of the right analogy?
I like that, except to be clear, I was unlicensed. I was a total scrub, had no experience. And
they gave you the knife.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they said, go ahead and operate.
That's right. Yeah.
That's great. Well,
fortunately, I had a terrific partner in that. And today we call each other co-founders, Chris Hayes. So that was the only way it was going to happen.
Okay. So you said co-founder, but I want to know, would you actually say co-refounder if you were going to be thinking about what that actually looked like? Because I know you like to think of yourself as a refounder versus the founder.
Yeah, no doubt. And that kind of came out of towards the, I don't know, I ran in health for 20 years. And towards the end, some of the board members like to introduce me as the founder. And they enjoyed doing that and thought that was like a beautiful title to bestow on me. But I don't know about Chris, but I had a little chip on my shoulder. And I thought, you know what? We were like turnaround people. We fixed something that was broken. And that felt different than just necessarily having an idea. And I don't know. So for whatever reason, it kind of, that idea of refounder stuck with me. And in my work today, what I find is that most CEOs and most companies, they desperately want to create a culture of refounders. There's already a founder. There's already a leader there. But what they want is people to think with a mindset like a founder. And since they're not the founder, I use that phrase refounder, and they want to build up people throughout the organization who take broken things and make them better with that mindset, like they are the founder.
Interesting. So for the folks joining, they probably don't know this, but you wrote a book on this concept called Refounder. And what you just described, when I start to think about that, it then doesn't need to just be the person in charge, I think is what you're saying. It actually can be anybody. Would you say any level of the organization can be that kind of a transformational leader?
It has to be. Yeah. I mean, so the person in charge, how much influence can they possibly have, right? It depends on the size of the organization, but if you're running a company of 50, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 50,000, you can set the pace, you can create elements of the culture, but at the end of the day, it's that culture of refounders or whatever you want to call it, that's going to make it successful. It's going to create the new products. It's going to deliver on the customer promise. That's who's going to make the company succeed or fail.
Interesting. And so when I think about that, I'm feeling a little bit of a distinction between what many people think of as like the visionary founder, which is somebody that's going to take something, have the idea, and kind of make it real, versus this refounder concept is almost taking, I think you used the term brokenness, and making it beautiful, making it fixed, making it work and thrive. Are there people that are wired to do one versus the other, or do you think that both are learned traits?
I think there's a lot to learn for all of us. And so I don't want to get into a conundrum of, are you a founder or are you an executor necessarily? Because I know it's easy to slide right into US or something like that. But I would say that it's situational. And to go back to that early example of, do you love to win or do you hate to lose? I don't want to oversimplify it, but just to say that if you can activate that stimulus in each person and kind of whether they love to win or whether they hate to lose, and get them motivated on a why, like why are they at the company? What's the mission of the company? And somehow translate that into action. I think you can be really, really successful.
Interesting. And I know you work with other founders today. So I love how you're taking your legacy of what you've built and kind of transferring it to the next generation. I think that's hugely impactful. And in terms of our show, we love to talk about and think about the impact that we're having on the world. Yeah. So I would love to hear, tell me a little bit about either the kinds of businesses or the kinds of founders or refounders that you like to work with. Do they tend to be folks in that kind of a situation where it's like, hey, there's some serious brokenness here and I'm jumping in to help get them out of it?
I guess what I find is, the more I listen to entrepreneurs and leaders and CEOs, everybody's got trouble. Everybody's got real problems, and whether they're acting, if they're kind of faking it or not is really the question. So what I find is that there is a common denominator, the kind of people that I will work with, and there is a coachability, there is a humbleness, there's an ambition as well. Essentially, they all want to go on this. They want to be on the path from 0 to $1 billion. None of the founders or CEOs that I work with right now run companies that are worth more than $1 billion. And I don't know if that's just a limit point for me, but I'd say the interest is people who are on that journey from 0 to $1 billion and somewhere in between usually. And when you ask and you get under the hood, so to speak, there's lots of things that are broken. And maybe for one CEO, it's the culture in the organization. They have to change it. And that's through some soft and some hard things. For others, it's they haven't unlocked growth and they have to figure it out, whether it's organic or inorganic growth. For some, well, I'll stop there. There's a lot of problems.
There's a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Well, I can attest to that firsthand. Just on my experience, growing a business, as you know, we've grown from 0 to 100 employees pretty quickly. And one of the things that I've found to be particularly challenging is the people side of the business. And one of the things that I love about you and I learn about you all the time is how you think of that. And so this organization that you refounded, Net Health, I'd love to hear a little bit about, so we talked about the impact of you working with other CEOs. What about you building and growing that team? I mean, was it 600 employees when you left, somewhere around there? So from 2 to 600 is wild to think about, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that journey, and then tell me about culture and people, because I know those are things that are on your heart and passionate about.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I think the earliest years, I used to wonder, will I be able to keep my job for another 3 weeks, 3 months,
Yeah.
and then it was a year, and then it was, will the board approve this budget, and can we actually make it happen? And I started thinking in kind of longer terms. One thing I began to adopt though was revenue and EBITDA targets are lovely. They're wonderful, and they will allow you to create really important programs for your people and for your customers and things like that. But I started turning my focus to the number of highly engaged teammates I could have. And while in private equity circles, that's a little unpopular because it's like maybe we should trim headcount. We shouldn't think of it that way. It was, if you can unlock that engagement and really have raving fans in terms of employees who are super engaged, what I found was that they'll actually create the products, they'll create the services, they'll create the brand, they'll develop the next growth metric. And so if you focus too much on the metric of revenue growth or EBITDA, the rule of 50, we were really into like the rule of 50. If you think too much about that and then you take your eye off, how am I growing my people? How am I encouraging them? How am I paying them? How am I leading them? What are the programs that are going to help them thrive? If you take your eye off that ball, I think you can get lost pretty quickly. So I turned my attention, a lot of my teammates did as well, to how do we create like an ecosystem for the people who are doing the work where they can really thrive. They can be known, they can be excited, they can be paid well. And yeah, I'll pause there. That was a lot of fun for me. It still is fun for me today. And it's a lot of the stuff I like to work on.
So 2 questions. One, how do you measure that? Is it like an ENPS score that you would do periodically? And 2, what I'd really love to dig into is the TED Talks, because I know that that's something that you mentioned to me. We're now doing here at Birgo, and something that you've kind of, in my opinion, really created a culture where that is tied to the employee experience. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think one of the simplest way, I mean, certainly ENPS, pulse surveys, all those things matter. Do people believe what the leaders say? Is one of the simplest ways to think about culture.
Yeah, that's good.
Is there an earnest belief of like what's going down? Is there a lot of cynicism, sarcasm in the organization? So one of the programs we started, we call it NED Talks, like Net Health Education instead of TED. It was founded on this idea that we wanted to do it in really small and big ways, and TED Talks were kind of like a big public way, right? And this is the idea that if you can create moments of authentic vulnerability, which is juxtaposed with show up and throw up, like inauthentic, it's too much.
Right.
So if you can create moments of authentic vulnerability, what we found is that it builds trust. So if you share something with me and I share something with you, and we kind of have that authentic moment, I like you a little more, you like me a little more, and you trust me a little more. And then when you and I have a little bit of trust, what ends up happening is we're not afraid to flex our like risk-taking muscles together. We can do something maybe a little crazier than we thought we would do, and take a risk in business or in friendship or in community. And so there's this cycle that authentic vulnerability creates trust and then allows us to create these risk-taking muscles so that we kind of take bigger and maybe more important risks together. And so that cycle is the only way to create really, really ambitious goals and visions. Like if you can't continue to do that with each other, you're not going to be able to succeed there. And if you can do some really big and bold things.
Yeah.
So, to your question about the TED Talks, imagine, we would invite, let's say 7-ish people every year from all across the company, not professional speakers. And then we would coach them for about maybe 8 weeks. I had an amazing team. Erica and Josh would help me with this, and we would just love on these people and encourage them. But we were rough too. It was kind of like, this idea has to matter. Come on, let's keep it professional, so to speak. It never tied back to the company. These were their stories. These are extraordinary things that happened to them in their life and that formed them. And then can you imagine any one of these people getting up on stage? One of my favorites was the August Wilson Theater in Pittsburgh, packed, house, somebody walking out on stage, their hands inevitably like trembling. Yeah, I told them don't use handheld notes, but they still have some handheld notes. And then there's an exchange that happens where that nervousness and fear that they have turns into care on your part. and you start leaning in your seat a little bit, and you don't say it out loud, but you're kind of like, you got this. Like, we've got your back. Come on. You can do it. And inevitably they share some transformative experience that happened to them that's totally appropriate for that setting. And then you leave, probably a standing ovation, but you leave feeling like you know them better. And then, next week when you're on a call, when you're in a different city, pitching something, or you're in a product meeting, like, it's different.
Yeah.
You know them differently and you trust them in a slightly different way. That's a big, big, big picture way to do that. Like, the real question for leaders is, how do we do that on a small scale, like on the daily?
Yeah. And that's exactly where my head goes, because as I think about trust and building trust, I immediately think of Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team, and that first foundational layer of the pyramid being trust. And one of the things we talk about a lot is vulnerability-based trust. And that's exactly what you're describing. And, but see, I always think of that in terms of a team or a one-on-one setting. And the TED Talk, from what I'm gathering, is almost like a one-to-many way of building that same kind of trust, which is really cool. It's a way that you can actually bring even more people in that may not even be on the same team, but they can, I immediately am now building trust, vulnerability-based trust with the person on stage. And in some way, they're building it back with me because I feel that, I sense that, I got your back.
That's right.
We're in this together.
Oh, yeah. Another thing I like to advise leaders on that is, you don't always have to be the person standing up and bloviating about the values or this. It's like, have other people that embody that, share that story, share their story, let them do that. And then inevitably you're kind of embodying the values of the company instead of maybe just the senior leaders always doing it.
Yeah, that's really good. So I implemented this a year ago. I told you, thanks for the idea. I'm gonna steal it. And what we've actually done is at Birgo, we've tied it to our theme of the year. So last year, our theme was Excellence Wins. We had Horst Schulze, who is co-founder of the Ritz-Carlton, come in, talk about his book, Excellence Wins. And then our TED Talks every quarter have been 2 to 3 employees talking about their journey to excellence in something. So the first person was talking about crocheting. So she gets up there and she's talking about excellence in crocheting. And, nobody in the audience knows about crocheting, but she's pouring out her heart on something she's passionate about in her hobby. And I didn't know the impact that it would have, but people were crying. And as soon as she finished, and I didn't initiate this, everybody got up and gave her a standing ovation.
Beautiful.
And I was like, oh my gosh, a story on excellence to crocheting. And we're all crying and giving her a standing ovation.
You know what? Sometimes I think the easy thing to do is just being this hard charging organization. And instead, moments like that, crocheting. I mean, really, it's great. You're still talking about it now, and I bet your team is too.
Yeah. Oh, they've been one of the most impactful things we've done. Our theme for this year is growth on purpose. We had Clint Hurdle come in and talk about developing a white belt mentality, which has been really good. We've been trying to develop that white belt mentality as a company. And so again, I'm encouraging, we have 2 TED Talks coming up here in just a couple of weeks. They're going to talk about a way in which they grew in an uncomfortable way by developing a white belt mentality. And I don't want to spoil it for, the listeners who may be Bergonites, but they're already really powerful. So the legacy is living on.
Well, it sounds like you take culture pretty seriously here.
We do. Yeah. I've always loved people. I mean, from my perspective, culture is, the manifestation of the people that are there. And that's why I do what we do. I mean, I think all day about the impact that we're having on the people that, come through the doors to work at Birgo, and how I can improve that and improve their life. I mean, that's our mission, improving lives through real estate. How can I, for as long as they're here at Birgo, have them leave a better person, personally, professionally, and on all fronts?
It sounds like leaders can learn a lot from you.
Yeah. And I learn a lot from them. Like you said, it's anybody in the organization, I love spending time with all levels of our organization. I was with our maintenance team last week, and I actually, I learned a lot from them day in and day out, like the calloused hands and, swinging the hammer and showing up and having self-discipline. I mean, there's a lot to say about the work that they do to keep our residents safe. And,
so good.
It's an honor and a privilege to get to serve the team.
Yeah.
In addition to lead them.
That's great.
Yeah. So tell me about the next season, next chapter. What are you excited about? What are you working on that's maybe fun and different than, leading CEOs?
Yeah. Well, so yeah, that's definitely my day job and a lot of fun. I'm loving planting seeds with students right now. So I'm doing some of that. So I teach about one class a semester at Carnegie Mellon. This semester I taught MBA students. It's a joy and a privilege to be able to spend that time just kind of encouraging and teaching and leading these next gen leaders. So I'd say that's pretty fun.
Yeah.
I'm working on a couple of other things as well. One thing I've been doing more workshops and keynotes about culture and about our story 0 to a billion. But well, one of the things that I'm having the most fun there is this project called the Dinner Stories. And the Dinner Stories started out as a solution to a problem I had, which was when I needed to bring a group of leaders together that didn't know each other. How could I fast forward that trust building? And everybody comes together for, let's have dinner, get to know each other a little bit. But there's a lot of challenges with that. You've got the extrovert who's probably oversharing. You've got an introvert who just wants to go home. You've got a lot of subtle, humble brags going on, and people don't even realize they're doing it, but they're alienating each other oftentimes because they're anxious and they want to get to know each other, but sometimes they just aren't as practiced and as good as they think. And in other cases, they're too polished, and that's turning people off as well. So it started out as a solution to a problem I had when I had to convene some people. And it's a really simple thing where we start off, bring like 8 people together, and you speed date for 5 minutes. And I've got these cool guides. There are a couple questions that are off limits, not many. And I encourage people to talk about finding out the most interesting thing they can about the other person.
Wait, let me pause you real quick. Is the format, so 8 people get together, is the speed dating one-on-one or is it in a group setting?
One-on-one.
Okay. So before you actually are all together as 8 people, you're speed dating, getting to know each person.
That's right. And you got to start that quickly from when you get together. Because if you're doing with a group of people who have never met before, there is quite an anxiousness going on. If you're bringing in your management team, it's a little bit different. So it starts off with 5 minutes of speed dating. And that's, you can go back and forth. You asking me a question, I'm asking you a question. It can be helpful to have a cocktail or a glass of wine. You don't have to. And then
now, are these questions in those 5-minute speed dates, are they vulnerability based or is it very surface level?
You can ask anything you want. But what I always find is for people who are new to it, by about the 3rd interview, they start to get what's actually going on. You're really trying to get to know the person. And I tend to ask corny questions about your childhood because it's disarming. It's kind of, what was your first album? And then if people try to flex like it was a really cool album, I'll push back and be like, be honest. What really was it? Or what was that TV show you watched as a kid or something?
Right.
I like to go there because it's relatable immediately to other people. Even if they're much older or much younger, they've heard of it and maybe they're real familiar. Maybe it was their favorite show.
Yeah.
So not to give it all away, but questions like that is what I like to focus on. But you can ask big questions too and get to know people that way. And then you switch. We've got a timer every 5 minutes. You're doing this. And then we sit down at a communal table. And then here's kind of the unlock. After about 10 minutes, I'll look to somebody else and say, hey, I want to tell you about my friend Andrew. Did you know that Andrew? And then I'll tell, probably a corny
his first album
story,
was Green Day.
Whatever.
Something
that sounds
embarrassing.
pretty cool. That's Green Day's still cool.
Yeah, cool.
But,
what do I know?
I'll share it and then I'll share a couple other things. And then I'll turn to the person next to me. Hey, do you learn anything about Andrew? And of course, the materials I have, you can take notes and stuff like that. And there's this unique change that occurs. Whereas you came in sort of a group of strangers or worse yet, a management team who's sick of each other because you're dealing with the problems. And then I notice, Andrew, that people try to outdo each other to tell the good story of the other person, which is the opposite of what usually happens when you come together as a group. It's more about, what are you doing? Where are you vacationing? What do you do for a living?
Right.
And instead it's like, you know what? I found out that Andrew, did this. And then people who don't take notes, what ends up happening is they say things like, I don't remember exactly what we talked about, but I just really like that Andrew guy. And so this is great in a corporate setting. This is good with a group of friends, et cetera. But originally, when I designed it, it was a little after the pandemic. And what I found is that we were getting super polarized. And so also with social mobility, it's really hard for people to meet other people. And so I would deliberately set these tables with people who had high power, absolutely no power, high social mobility, no social mobility, and very different beliefs in life.
Yeah.
And so it was a little chemistry lab, and inevitably what happens is they walk away friends.
Wow, that's beautiful. And what a way to create unity. I always say unity is not uniformity, right? You're intentionally bringing people together that are diverse, of diverse opinion, diverse socioeconomic status.
Yeah.
That is such a beautiful thing. These sessions always go fast. I can't believe we're already running out of time here. If folks want to connect with you or learn more about what you're up to, and by the way, I did not plant this here. You can see this is on my bookshelf here at the Birgo office and in our studio, but they can definitely pick up a copy of Refounder, I assume. I've got one here, one over there in case I ever don't have one close by. So besides that, how can people get a hold of you?
Check me out on LinkedIn. You can check my workout at CoSage as well. And I don't know, I'm around town.
Great. Well, thank you, Patrick, so much for being on the show. Such a privilege to have you. Thanks to our listeners for listening in. If you have any questions or if we can serve you in any way, check us out at birgo.com/realreturns. There's also a newsletter on there that you can subscribe to, and we will look forward to seeing you all next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Real Returns. Tune in every other Wednesday for more conversations around investing, entrepreneurship, and how business can instill a sense of purpose.